This is the Media in Mind with your host K.W.H. Dare to see the gray. This is episode 10, Conflict of Interest and Ignored Variables. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna we'll as always we'll start with the current events here. I'm just gonna go over one today here. In the last we haven't done last week I just took a holiday with my extended holiday with my family, so we didn't do the show last week. So I'm kind of going this is kind of a week old this report news report, but we'll just cover it anyways here. So yeah, as everyone knows, Trump signed the Genesis order, the Genesis program in last week to basically to as a cover story to use AI to advance medical discoveries to basically speed up the process. Instead of years, it said months or days or hours or something, which sounds like a nightmare to me because everybody knows how warp speed went. I don't think that was directly AI. That wasn't AI, but he he did do the studies. He just rushed and he just rushed the studies and didn't do any safety trials or anything and just had it come out and we know what that did. It wasn't too good. It did a lot of bad, gave a lot of people a lot of bad side effects and killed them and maimed them and all that stuff. So I wouldn't really trust anything that came at him, especially AI too. So I think really this is it's there's also a bunch of other stuff with it. People are saying it's expanding the AI surveillance grid, and they're trying to just recently I don't know, they've been saying it change all your Google passwords and everything, and all your accounts and stuff, and um, uh, we think that it's to kind of just to collect to basically rebuild or rebuild a digital twin profile for you, like all your history in the last, I don't know, 20 years or whatever. And sometimes people don't log into those, so it kind of there's a missing piece of it. And then so sometimes they're hoping that you go back. I mean, I don't know for sure, but that's what I'm thinking. This is kind of a trick to get people to sign in all their accounts so they can rebuild the profile if there's missing things and trying to collect more data from people. But primarily the outsides are saying it speeds up medical discoveries, which which and we'll get into this. We'll probably talk about now, but the long term. Um, a lot of these studies are never long term. Even before COVID, it's usually like 5 to 10 years or something. But usually it doesn't go any over that. It's usually definitely not multiple decades to really, and that's usually how you find out if there's these things have ill effects or whatever. But they don't want to do long term studies because that would really um, hinder. Well, it would get them in the pocket. So because people would start finding out what they're actually up to. Um, but yeah, but the 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 problem with the biggest problem not doing the long-term studies um, are because of the not being able to find out if a product really is bad. Now, I do agree. You know, um, I do think they should people should have a choice. Like if they want to take experimental and it's not passed yet, then they should have a right to do that. But it's just like it's just the current medical system is always usually there to try to scam people and give them more bad effects. So it's kind of so corrupted. It's hard to trust anything from them. But if it was fixed, you'd still, yeah, you should offer that option. But it should never be released by it because the FDA always approves stuff that shouldn't be approved. But yeah, and then of course, we're going to the main topic here, the conflict of interest and ignored variables. Um, the biggest problem is usually these companies doing their own studies. They don't have any independent. They don't have independent. companies or organizations doing this, they usually do their own studies, so they'll cut certain data out that so they can make it look good if it passed the studies. They've been caught doing this. I it was the early 2000s. There was a big case, and I think the Senate they had a case, and there was a guy that he actually manipulated the data in the vaccines, the MMR vaccine studies on I think it was African American males, and an increase of autism after the vaccine. And he actually cut a lot of that data out to make it look like they were safe. And then I don't know, he fled the country. I forget what his name is. I knew what his name. I have it, written down somewhere, but I just don't remember the name. But yeah, so that was manipulation of their data. So that's a lot of times it's what they'll do. And um, I had, when I was working for an IT company, I don't know, like 8 years ago. Um, I would look into these studies and they would say, oh, the vaccines had no ill effects on these monkeys and stuff. And then you find out they didn't do a biopsy on the whole brain. They only selected certain parts, and the parts that they didn't check is actually where the damage was. So it's kind of selected, so they can get what the results they want to get. So that's why the conflict of interest should never be accepted. It never should be your own company doing its own research. So that kind of covers that. Basically on that. Um, and but yeah, what I mainly want to talk about is the variables because um, with a couple different subjects, topics here, because it's actually something universal that kind of that affects a lot of areas. So the first one I want to say, these are examples, but the first one is there's been studies, some studies, and they claim that raw milk it increases breast cancer in women, which is it's that's completely ridiculous because I never seen a study where they do pasteurized milk versus unpasteurized milk, raw milk. And so so how do they know like what are the in pasteurized milk there's it's heated up that kills most of the nutrients. That's one of the bad things about it. But the worst thing about it, and a lot of people don't notice, is they add a pasteurization chemical to the milk, which I've actually compared myself. I've actually drank raw milk. I've drank raw milk and I've compared it to pasteurized milk. And the pasteurized milk always gives you lactose. It gives you like the craps, lactose intolerance. I've noticed. But when I drank raw milk, I didn't get any of the stomach effects. So again, that's another thing that they'll try to they'll try to claim that milk in general cause lactose intolerance. But in my case, when I studied it, it was really actually just the pasteurized milk, which it's probably the chemical in there that's irritating your gut. I haven't seen it. If anybody wants to tell me, they can comment or whatever down here. But I've never seen a study where where they took out these variables. That to say what is it? Is it the chemical that's causing the gut issues, or is it the milk? So from my own personal, from my experience, yeah, the I didn't have problems with raw milk. It was just um, it was the pasteurized milk that I had a problem with. So that's something that So they're very sneaky. There's just too many variables they don't account to. So I'm gonna summarize this a little bit here because I wrote a lot of times I write I relatively I speak pretty well, but um my best ideas usually come out with writing. So that's why it's easier for me to summarize this with my Facebook past posts because there's a lot of things I already covered and wrote about. So let me share that with you. Let's cut the video for a second. And share the screen. Okay. Yeah. So, brother. Okay. So yeah, I already searched this to find out, some of the posts I did on variables. Well, I'll read this one here. It's kind of going over what we talked about with the pasteurized milk, but I'll just, summarize it. Conclude that with this here. I am 99% convinced that the only milk that is bad is pasteurized milk, not raw milk. Pasteurized milk is heated, and the most important difference is that it has pasteurization chemicals added, which is the real cause of lactose intolerance. I have been getting raw milk once a month and don't get any stomach issues. Good fat for the brain. Why can't people understand that the biggest problems with our food are the chemicals added to them? How can you do any real studies? You can't test them separately to eliminate the variables. Has there ever been a raw milk versus pasteurized milk study? Okay, yeah, and this is actually on drugs, because I always think it, with the variable subject, this kind of popped in my head, and it's kind of been kind of something I've been thinking about for a while. But um, you know, um, when a lot of times, when they do these studies on drugs and the ill effects on drugs, they do it on they don't um, they don't talk about they don't isolate the variables in these experiments. So heroin is it is basically opium, but there's other stuff mixed in with that. So there's it's not just there's a lot of other fillers that they put in, and there's a lot of nasty stuff that they put in. So, my basic point, and, I'll read this to better detail, but my basic point is like, how can they say, how do they know what the ill effects are of opium if it's the heroin's, mixed with a bunch of fillers? Like, how do they know what actually is causing the ill effect and what specific chemical is doing that? Um, so, because I always wondered, I mean, it's still, opium. I'm sure, you don't definitely don't want to get on it addicted. I think it's, you should probably personally, you should probably only try to use it for, medical reasons. If, you're in a lot of, you get a bad injury, and you can't get to the hospital, or you break your leg or something like that, because that's basically what, that's what they're using anyways. And, they're just, it's just a synthetic copy of an opium plant when you get like a Vicodin or Percocet or whatever. But you got to get it from the doctor, and he's got to, give you permission, that again, that should violate the Constitution. They should be asking for permission to grow a plant or get a drug. But anyways, yeah. So you have to ask, and then if what happens when the doctor's not around, and what happens if you can't? They're not making these anymore. So I personally think that everybody should legally be allowed to grow a opium plant, poppies in their backyard if they want, mainly for medicine. Um, if for pain relief if things go to crap, or they can't get to the doctor, whatever it is. So to be self-sufficient in your pain medicine. Um, so yeah, I think that's why I am a big believer that no drug should be illegal. That should be you should be able to grow anything you want in your backyard. That's your dude. The only thing that I would say where somebody should get prosecuted with drugs is if they happen to lace if they're they make an agreement with a client, and they say, hey, and they agreement what they're getting, and they add something the customer didn't agree on, and they lace it, and that lands up killing. And yeah, I think they should be prosecuted for that, because that's not what the customer agreed upon. That was snuck in there, so that would, trying to kill them with a poison or something, that I think should be a crime. But if they do know what they're doing and they're taking, and they both agree upon it, then that's their choice. That's pursuit of happiness. pursuit of happiness. That's not, that's covered, already covered in the Constitution. So there should be people, police around here, arresting you for that kind of stuff. So again, hopefully, if we get rid of this old system, and we ever get the new republic, that'll definitely be something that we're gonna, we're gonna try to stop that stuff. So, um, but um, but yeah, anyways, let me read this here. Okay. So I'm not into heroin or any hard drugs, but I have compassion for people that do. I feel the main issue that's ignored of the hard drugs is what chemicals they're cut with and grown with. For example, even though opium is very addictive in its pure form, when it's made into heroin, it's much more harmful because it's cut with many fillers and other chemicals. There are so many variables overlooked, it boggles my mind. How do we know what damage heroin actually causes when all these variables are present? That pretty much goes for anything, even food. In science, it's critical to eliminate as many variables as you can so you can get accurate data from the experiment. I feel if heroin addicts were allowed to grow their own poppies in their backyard, they at least would be able to use the drug without all the nasty fillers, especially fentanyl. They're so concerned with that. Yeah. So, yeah, that would eliminate that. Anyways, I do not believe that you should only be allowed to get medicine from the doctors. I should be able to grow any drug I want in my backyard. When things go to shit, there isn't going to be pharmacies. And sorry for painful injuries and surgeries. Wild lettuce is not going to cut it, and fuck their synthetic copies of the real drugs. The original form was better and less harmful, and sure the fuck didn't have fentanyl in it and their other nasty crap. Yeah, yeah, that's kind of another subject. I mean, it's kind of related to this here. Um, that's what they kind of been up to with it, and I think also Codex Alimentarius too. That I think that was signed in the early 2000s or anyways. I've been on that for a while, but anyways, yeah, they basically want to own every herb and every genetic on the planet. So, but for some weird reason, they can't own something that's already on the planet, a plant like that's all made by God or Energy Force or whatever. So they have to copy it and then change it a little bit. And usually when they make that change is usually when you get the side effects and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, a lot of this stuff is way better in its pure form. You don't need them. You don't need to take their crap. So that's why, like I said, that's why everybody should be able to grow any herb or any plant in their backyard. So, anyways, I'm not a big fan of synthetic man-made drugs like LSD, meth, ecstasy, etc. Um, um, I only take natural medicine grown from the earth, not molested by man, but I would not tell people they should not be allowed to use them. They have a right to pursue happiness. If they aren't hurting anyone, uh, then I don't know. If they aren't hurting anyone but themselves, no one has a right to tell them what to do. Yeah. And it's one thing like I never. I am not big on synthetics, really anything. I'm not even really big on taking really anything, even like Tylenol and um, you know, uh, over the counter stuff, even flu stuff. When I was younger, my mom didn't really give us Tylenol. She gave us, usually herbs and stuff. And because a lot of kids, the parents would always give them Tylenol. Usually they'd be sick more often. So, it caused problems and stuff. So I never really took the over the counter stuff. And when I was a teenager, a lot of my, well, at first, a lot of my friends, we were just into cannabis, just weed, and that was my main thing. I said I always had a philosophy, and I said I only smoke the green. And like I wouldn't even smoke cigarettes or anything. Like I wouldn't, I was just, I wanted just I didn't like stuff molested by man, anything that was synthetic. So I always just stuck to that, natural stuff. But some of my friends and fortunately, my younger brother, he got into the synthetic stuff, like the acid LSD and other stuff, and yeah, that's when I saw a big, well, and then a couple of years later he got schizophrenia, and I don't know exactly if that was the cause, but he definitely seemed like that definitely changed him. And I've seen a lot of people do. It's kind of disturbing. Like, if you have taken it, like I don't know this, but it's something I kind of see in people after they've taken LSD, just the complete uh I don't know, it's weird. Like it's like they're like on a like almost like a fake spiritual overlay of how would I put that? Like their spiritual journey, like they're on like almost like they're like on a fake spiritual journey or something. It's kind of weird. Like um I don't know. It's like they um it overlays like the Kundalini effect or something. I think like it kind of mimics that, but it's kind of like a fake synthetic version of it. And I don't know, it just kind of creeps me out. Like it's just kind of an overlay of not the real thing, you know what I mean? So, but I don't know. I just noticed people get kind of weird after that. And the other one I've noticed a lot is one of my friends after they, was ecstasy too. Like I've noticed like that usually I've seen a big change in people's personalities after that. Um, I mean, not all the time, but a lot of times I've noticed like this one kid, he had like a deep voice, and like after he took ecstasy, I mean he took a lot. I think he took a lot too. I don't think just once or whatever, but then like he actually had like a feminine kind of a gay voice. Like his voice was like gay almost, and I don't know. It just I noticed a lot of people get like really depressed because the drug it like gets you really happy when you're on it, and it kind of like uses up everything into your brain. I think it only like burns it out. So anyways, yeah, there's certain ones that I've seen people really change, not so much weed, like, but you shouldn't abuse it or anything like that. And I'm guilty of that sometimes. I do take breaks, a couple months usually, but yeah, that's kind of my issue. But yeah, I'm not big into I don't recommend anything synthetic, Um, nature has been, perfecting it for a lot. I mean, you still got to be careful with stuff, but nature's been perfecting it for millions or billions of years, so I think I trust that more in man's recent stuff. So that's what but yeah, I kind of summarize that. But yeah, so yeah, we were talking about heroin, but this can apply to anything, like cannabis too. Like there's a lot of studies that, there's a lot of these new articles and studies saying, cannabis, like this, where is it here? Yeah, well, yeah, 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 here cannabis and cancer, and it causes cancer or causes these different health effects and everything, and it's the same thing, they don't they don't do two separate studies. They don't do one with the cannabis plant sprayed with pesticides, and then one with an organic versus an organic cannabis plant, that doesn't have anything sprayed on it. It's just the natural stuff on the plant. And then they'll say, oh, this causes cancer or something, or whatever. And then it's just not, it's you just it just I think it's crazy because there's no, well, what is crazy because there's so many, just hundreds and thousands of variables not accounted for. So they don't, and plus they don't know what the person did. What was their lifestyle? Like what other drugs did they take in their lifetime? Did they take prescription drugs? Did they use heroin? Did they use acid? I mean, like, there's so many factors, the stuff that's sprayed in the sky with the chemtrails. I mean, like that even makes it even harder to kind of isolate. So I really think a lot of this is just smokes and mirrors. I really think, and just to make money and make fake drugs and the demand for them. So, that's pretty much what I think, and fortunately, um, a lot of these studies are probably going to have to be in the last 100 years, especially with the Rockefellers and all the conflict of interest that probably, at a certain for 100 years, we're probably going to have to be redoing these experiments and trying to fix the things that they twisted and perverted. I mean, that's going to be probably one of the biggest challenges, if we ever get the country back or we get a new republic or anything, get rid of this old system. So um, it's really crappy. I mean, just especially what the Rockefellers did, in the early 1900s to the the doctors that used to come to the house, like, the Little House on the Prairie, felt like Dr. Baker, how you come to the house, and actually they didn't charge a lot of money. It was like, any other kind of trade. They anybody could really get the doctor to come over. So it was more personalized visit. And a lot of times, a lot of the doctors use herbs and stuff. They were studied in that, and they would use that stuff first. And yeah, a lot of them, Rockefellers jailed a lot of them, and just started just perverting medicine in general. So it's just a mess. Very unfortunate. So um, yeah, I mean, another thing that pops in my brain here about variables is the COVID-19 thing. They said, oh, it killed all those people and caused a problem, and then all those problems and side effects, and then um, and then they were saying, and a lot of people are saying, what happened to the regular flu? Like, did the flu just disappear? And then because yeah, they just mixed those numbers all together, so how did they compare the regular flu to the COVID? And then, and I think we said this before, but COVID-19 was never isolated. They still have not given proof to that. So, how could they say, and how could they even test for it to say if they don't even know what the virus, they haven't isolated, how could they compare anything to tell you what caused the problem? So, yeah, that's my biggest pet peeve of that, so, um, but yeah, it's pretty bad, so yep. So yeah, so we're getting towards the end of the show here. So I'll wrap this up here. And yeah, I'll take my screen back here. There you go. Okay, yeah, so if you yeah, you want to, as always, if you want to support me, just go to kwholland.com and then click on books. And then, yeah, there's the unabridged edition and the abridged edition. They're both currently on Amazon now. Just because of the shipping cost, I can't keep up with the shipping cost. And so hopefully something else better comes along. And like I said before, I do if you're 20-mile radius near me, then locally I do sell them physically here for a discounted price, 13.13 instead of 17.76. So there's a little bit of a discount there if you buy it locally. So yeah, I think that covers this show, and we'll see you next time.